Welcome, and thank you for standing by. At this time, all participants are on a listen-only mode until the end, where there'll be an opportunity for verbal questions. Today's webinar is being recorded. If you have any objections, you may disconnect at this time. Now, I'd like to turn the call over to your host, Alexa Ciro from the U.S. Census Bureau. Alexa, you may begin.
Thank you. Welcome and good afternoon. We are excited to have you all joining us today. My name is Alexa Ciro, and I will be the host for today's webinar, using data.census.gov to explore race and ethnicity data, where we will briefly go over the concepts of race and ethnicity, share tips and tricks to help you find the data on the Census Bureau's main data platform, and show you where to find helpful resources. For this webinar event, I am joined by several of my colleagues, and we will be providing support to our speaker by monitoring the chat, sending you helpful links, and answering as many questions as we can. We are encouraging participants to use the Q&A panel in WebEx to submit questions throughout the presentation, and to keep an eye on the chat panel for links and other helpful information. If you send a question via the Q&A panel, please make sure to use the All Panelists option to submit. We will have a live Q&A session towards the end of the webinar. We are allowing one question per participant. Participants who would like to ask a question are welcome to use the raise hand icon, which appears next to your name in WebEx. That will prompt us to open up your line. You'll then need to unmute yourself to ask your question. As a quick note, the Q&A session will focus on the platform data.census.gov. We will not be able to go over in depth to address questions on 2020 census products or data. As always, we are recording the webinar today, and all the materials for this training will be available through the Census Academy website. Thank you so much for joining us today. Now I'll go ahead and hand things off to our presenter, Tyson Weister. Thank you.
Great, thanks Alexa, and thank you all so much for joining the webinar this afternoon using data.census.gov to explore race and ethnicity data. My name's Tyson Weister, and I work on the communications team in the Center for Enterprise Dissemination, which is the communications team for the platform we're talking about today. Now, our goal for everyone on the call today is to walk out first with the understanding of key concepts for race and ethnicity. We want you to know basic information about how we categorize and collect the information so that you can make sense when you're looking at tables on data.census.gov for what those categories mean. After we've covered that, we'll do a live demonstration of accessing race and ethnicity data on data.census.gov. First, we'll start with population distribution by race and ethnicity, and then we'll show you how you can go about selecting more granular individual population groups. First, we'll start with some of the more major race and ethnic groups, such as Asian, and then we'll show you how to select detailed population groups, such as Korean. After we've gone through the live demonstration, which will include accessing both population totals for these groups as well as characteristics of these groups, we'll talk about common questions and then open up for your questions at the end. So to get started, race and ethnicity key concepts. Want everyone to be aware that the Census Bureau does collect race and ethnicity data according to Office of Management and Budget, or OMB standards. One of the key components of this is that OMB defines race and ethnicity as two separate concepts. So this means 100% of the population is reporting and we're categorizing their race. 100% of the population also belongs to our ethnicity or Hispanic origin categories. Do keep in mind people of Hispanic or Latino origin may be of any race groups. Also, collection is based on self-identification. This means that the U.S. Census Bureau does not tell respondents which checkboxes to mark for different race and ethnicity groups as they're completing the form. We also do not tell people how to respond and write in free-form text boxes. It's all self-identified. And also keep in mind that people may identify with one or more race groups. We'll talk about that in more detail in just a moment. But for now, if you do have more curiosity or questions about how race and Hispanic origin are defined, I do recommend visiting the links at the bottom of this slide for more details. Moving on to race, there are basic race categories that you'll commonly see in Census Bureau data tables on data.census.gov. I want to walk through what those categories are. First, OMB requires that we collect data with a minimum of 5 race categories. Those categories are white, Black or African American, American Indian or Alaska Native, Asian, and Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islander. In addition, the Census Bureau allows a 6th race category called some other race. And then again, keep in mind that people may identify with one race group or multiple race groups. So with that, in our Census Bureau data tables, you'll commonly see these categories as those race groups alone. And you may also see a 7th category for 2 or more races. In Census Bureau data tables, these 7 categories is a common way of accessing race and race data through the US Census Bureau, and 100% of the population is going to be categorized into one of these 7 categories. In addition to that, 100% of the population is also reporting their Hispanic or Latino origin. So they would be categorized as either Hispanic or Latino or not Hispanic or Latino. And do keep in mind people of Hispanic or Latino origin may be of any race groups. In just a moment, we'll take a look at the Census Bureau data tables that will explain this more clearly for you. And with that, we're ready to go into our live demonstration showing you how to access these data. What I wanted to start with was population distribution by race and ethnicity. So we're going to look at the distribution of the population in the US, first by race, then by ethnicity, and then we're going to look at a table that shows ethnicity cross-tabulated by race. So going to the live site, you'll go to data.census.gov. We do recommend using Google Chrome for the best speed and performance. And for today's webinar, we're going to be using exclusively the advanced search function. So it's directly under the single search bar. You'll click the link for advanced search. The reason I want to use the advanced search is because it allows you to most precisely select the detailed filters that we're going to be working with. It also allows you access to all available search options, including all available detailed race and ethnicity categories. On the left-hand side, what we're going to be doing is clicking through the primary categories on the left. We'll choose folders to allow for more detailed options, and ultimately we're looking for a checkbox as a final search selection. For my purpose, as of right now, I want to select the filter for race and ethnicity. So what I'll do is click Topics on the left. Then I'll choose the folder, Race and Ethnicity. And then we see some folders, but also some checkboxes. I'd like to choose the checkbox, Race and Ethnicity. The reason is that I want data for all groups. So choosing race and ethnicity, once you mark the checkbox in the upper left, you'll see the filter appear. Once you're happy with your search criteria, go ahead and click the search button in the lower right, and then you'll click Tables at the top. So I selected a very broad search filter, so not surprising that there's 2,162 table results. We have lots of different data and tables at the Census Bureau for looking at race and ethnicity. I want to take a look at some of these table results. What you can do is at the top, it shows you the first 10 tables by default, and you can page through the different options. I'm going to increase this by clicking 50. It just allows me to scan the list a little bit more quickly, especially when you're working with long lists. I do recommend increasing the default number of tables. As you're looking through on the left, when you click a table title, you'll see the data populate on the right-hand side of your screen. So what we're seeing first are a collection of sex by age tables for individual race and ethnicity groups. Then we see a collection of tables for median age by sex, again broken out for the different race and ethnicity groups. And just below that, I will get to a table which I want to take a moment to highlight for you. It's table B02001, race. And this table contains the answer to our first question, what is the population distribution by race? So clicking that on the left, we'll see the orange bar in shading, and the right-hand side of the screen will display the data. So we see these data are coming from the American Community Survey one-year estimates from the 2021 vintage of the ACS. And on the right side of the screen, we see the data. I wanted to point out there are some rows in the tables that we're showing today that will have arrows, and that means you can expand or collapse the level of detail. I'm going to be clicking that as I walk through some different talking points, just so you can understand what I'm describing a little bit better. But for this table, the first row shows us that there were 331,893,745 total people living in the United States based on this survey. And then below it is showing you 100% of the population is being categorized into those one of 7 race groups. This is the same information I showed you on the slide. So that's what the population distribution looks like by race. I want to show you what it looks like by ethnicity. So I'm going to scroll down through this table list on the left until I see Hispanic or Latino origin. The next table I want to show you is B03001, Hispanic or Latino origin by specific origin. Notice at the top of the table, it also comes from the 2021 ACS one-year estimates. And I'm going to collapse some of the detail here for just a moment. The first data row of the table shows the same total population number. And here you can see very clearly that 100% of the people are being categorized as either not Hispanic or Latino or Hispanic or Latino. This particular table also happens to provide more detail about the Hispanic or Latino population if you'd like to see the individual subgroups of more detailed Hispanic or Latino categories that they may identify with. You can view that in this table. So it shows out of the more than 62 million Hispanic or Latino people living in the United States, how many are Mexican, Puerto Rican, Cuban, etc. And then another way of looking at data by race and ethnicity is to cross-tabulate these two distinct concepts into one table. So on the left-hand side, I want to show you this. It's actually the table result just below what I'm looking at, B03002, Hispanic or Latino origin by race. So clicking on the table title and collapsing some of the detail, we'll notice at first we're getting, again, total population, not Hispanic or Latino, and Hispanic or Latino. But within each of these categories, you can also look at the breakdown by race. So for the 269 million plus people who are not Hispanic or Latino, it's giving you here what races they identify with. And scrolling just below, same thing for the Hispanic or Latino population. It shows you what race or races they identify with. All right, so now that we have an understanding of how to access some high-level race and ethnicity data and a good sense of race and ethnicity being two distinct concepts, I wanted to start showing you how you can take a deeper dive into data for particular population groups to not only find totals for those population groups, but also characteristics. So first, we're going to show you how to access these data for those major population groups through what we call standard tables. But before I describe what standard tables are, I did want to take a moment to talk about the filters that we're using and going to be using on data.census.gov to access data for these population groups. So depending on what filter you select, you're either going to notice that words or codes are added to the URL. So this screenshot on the left is showing you an example where I've marked the checkbox for Asian, And then in the URL, it's added T equals Asian, so a word to the URL. Any filter that adds words to your URL are going to give you data from what I'm calling standard tables. You'll also see a number of filters when you select them that add codes to the URL. For instance, you can see the selection for Asian alone has added T equals 012, so a numerical code, to my URL, and that gives you takes you down a pathway to get data for iterated tables. So what I want you to be mindful of is that the filter you select is going to take you down one of two table pathways. You don't necessarily need to memorize it, but we're going to be paying close attention to it as we're working through the codes today so that you have a deep understanding of what's going on and the different types of tables that are available. Now, when I'm using the filters, I find it most beneficial to simply look at the URL and see whether words or codes are being added based on my selection. You can also look at the phrasing in the filters and folders themselves to also give you an indication for whether the filter you select is a code-based iterated table filter or a filter that would give you standard tables. So other indications of iterated table filters are essentially the keywords that you're seeing underlined here. So if you see any checkboxes with the words or phrase all available, alone, in combination, or of any race, those are all code-based iterated filters. In addition, any folder that contains the word detailed in the folder tells you that all of the checkboxes in that folder are also code-based iterated filters. So there's two different types of tables that we're talking about, and iterated tables are great because they give you the greatest coverage for detailed population groups. However, the standard tables give you the greatest geographic coverage and the most recent data. So if you're ever not sure which filter you need to start and you have confusion about which one to select, I do recommend giving standard tables a first look simply to get the greatest geographic coverage and most recent data. Specifically, you also would want to use standard tables anytime you're looking for population totals for basic race and ethnicity groups that we showed earlier on the live site, as well as population totals for most detailed race and ethnic groups. You also want to use these standard tables for characteristics of basic race and ethnic groups, for example, poverty status of the Hispanic population. Again, the advantages are the most recent data are provided through these standard tables. In addition, geographic coverage being greater, and this is in a couple of different ways, you'll see geographic coverage being more beneficial in these standard tables. They include more levels of geography. They go all the way down to the block level for decennial census data and block group for American Community Survey. You'll also be more likely to find data for the specific geography you selected and find that the table you're trying to pull up is compatible through the standard tables versus iterated tables. The reason for this is that iterated tables have population thresholds. We're going to talk about that at the very end, so don't worry about it for now. Just know that the geography coverage is best through the standard tables. You do not need to memorize which tables are standard and which ones are iterated, but I am providing them here for you just for awareness and educational purposes. For the American Community Survey, for today's discussion, when I say standard tables, I am referring to ACS data profiles as well as detailed and subject tables. For the decennial census, I'm referring to summary files 1 and 3, as well as the redistricting data. And then the comparable product would be next month's release of the 2020 Census Demographic and Housing Characteristics file. If you're looking at a particular data table, what I'm showing here on the right-hand side of the screen is the product drop-down menu. Will always tell you which product type you're currently clicked into. In here, we're looking at an example of the ACS detailed tables. Other than the product type, other indications that you are accessing race and ethnicity data from a standard table is where you see the population group referenced. So for standard tables, you may see your population group appear in the table title. Here I'm showing an example of a table title that has Asian alone in parentheses at the end. They also may appear in the universe statement. Here we're showing a table that has universe reading people who are Asian alone. And finally, you may see them as we saw on the previous live site with the population groups being in the data rows of the table. For instance, this table has a row Asian alone. Also, as another tip for education and awareness only, your table IDs, you may see table IDs that end in A through I. When you're working with the standard tables, the letter at the very end of the table ID tells you the population group that it references. These tables are repeated for the major race and ethnic groups. Tables A through G are the one of 7 race categories that cover 100% of the population. And then table IDs that end in H or I provide data for the most popular Hispanic or Latino categories. So Hispanic or Latino overall, as well as white alone, not Hispanic or Latino. Whether it's H or I depends on whether you're working with decennial census tables or American Community Survey data tables. So hope that background information was helpful. But now let's go ahead and take a moment to show you just how easy it is to start accessing data for standard tables. We're going to walk through 2 quick examples of this. First, I want to show how to find the set of tables that provide population totals and characteristics of the Asian population. Specifically, we're going to find the table that provides the sex by age breakout of Asians in the US. Navigating back to the live site, I'll click the US Census logo in the upper left to start us fresh from the landing page. And once again, we'll use the advanced search. On the left-hand side, we'll choose our filters. So I'll click Topics, then choose Race and Ethnicity. Then we'll click the folder for Asian. And then we start seeing some checkboxes to choose from. The checkbox that is the shortest word or phrase for your population group is typically for standard table. So I'm going to click the one that says Asian and also pay attention to the URL. So as soon as I click this checkbox, notice the address bar added T equals Asian. Again, a word or phrase, not a code. So that is a filter that's going to take me to the standard tables. And at this point, that is the only filter I wanted to select. So I'm going to go ahead and click Search in the lower right, then Tables at the top. Now before, when we selected race and ethnicity, we got over 2,000 table results. With a more fine-tuned filter selection, we've narrowed down to just 241 tables specifically for the Asian population. You can scroll through the tables. The third table result, B01001D, provides sex by age data for the Asian alone population and is specifically what I wanted to focus in on. Notice again, Asian alone is in the table title, and also my population group shows in the universe statement people who are Asian alone. This particular table shows us that in the US, there were over 19 million Asian alone people living here. And this table gives me the data for males as well as females. And within each of those, we can see the detailed age breakouts. So this table answers my specific data question, but on the left-hand side, you can scroll through and see all kinds of other tables for the Asian population. Moving on to our next example, now that we know about accessing population totals for these groups, I wanted to look at characteristics. So for our next example, we're going to see how many people of Hispanic or Latino origin are living in poverty in Springfield, Illinois. Going back to the live site, I'll click the US Census logo. And then once again, we'll choose Advanced Search. Now this time we want a few different filters. I want Hispanic or Latino, poverty, and my geography selection, Springfield, Illinois. You can start with whatever you think is most important. And here I'm going to choose the Hispanic or Latino filter first. I'll click Topics on the left, then choose Race and Ethnicity, then choose Hispanic or Latino. And once again, we see some options that we can start marking a checkbox. The shortest one for our population group, Hispanic or Latino, nice clean label. I'll go ahead and click that and then look at my URL. Confirm that yes, it's not adding codes, it's adding words and phrases. This is going to take me to the standard tables for Hispanic or Latino population. So it's where I want to start. Next, I'll go ahead and select my other filters and I'll choose poverty next. So on the left-hand side, clicking topics, then income and poverty, then choose the folder for poverty, and then I'll mark the checkbox for poverty. So I have my population group and my topic. The last thing is to select my geography. So on the left-hand side, we'll choose geography. There are hundreds of geographic levels to choose from at the Census Bureau. For the purpose of today's webinar, we're going to go ahead and just breeze right through this, but we have other trainings if you'd like more detailed information. I want data for Springfield, Illinois, which is considered a place. So I'm going to go ahead and choose the place box on the right-hand side of the screen. And then it's just a matter of following the prompts. We'll choose Illinois. And then we get a list of all of the places in Illinois that are loading up here on screen. They are in alphabetical order. If you'd like to scroll all the way down to Springfield, you're more than welcome to. Or you can click the search box at the top and start typing in where it says search place Springfield. This is going to narrow down to just the option that matches the text you typed in. So be mindful of your spelling. It is looking for an exact text match. Mark the checkbox to finalize that selection, and then you'll see it added to the left side of your screen. So here we have Hispanic or Latino, poverty, and Springfield City, Illinois. I'll go ahead and click the search button in the lower right to run this search, and then click tables at the top. So last time we had over 200 table results just by adding a poverty topic and a geography topic. I've been able very quickly to narrow down to something very manageable, only 9 table results. So do know that there are options if you'd like to narrow down that list. This particular case, the first table result, B17001I, poverty status in the past 12 months by sex, by age, Hispanic or Latino has the data I'm looking for. Notice that Hispanic or Latino is in the table title. It's also in the universe statement. And this particular table shows me that for Springfield City, Illinois, there were 3,101 people of Hispanic or Latino origin living in the city. And out of that number, 444 live below the poverty level. All right, so now that we've covered characteristics of these major race and ethnic groups, I also wanted to show you just how easy it is to access data for detailed population groups through the iterated tables. So just for clarity of terminology and that you know what I mean when I say detailed population groups, some examples of detailed population groups are on the right-hand side of the screen. So as an example, Japanese and Korean are examples of detailed population groups within the Asian race category. Polynesian is an example of a detailed population group within the Native Hawaiian and other Pacific Islander category. And you can see more examples: Cherokee, Navajo Nation, Mexican, Puerto Rican. There are hundreds of different detailed population groups with data on our site waiting for you to access the tables. These would be iterated tables, so they're going to be filters that add codes to the URL that take us to these tables. For your awareness, types of iterated tables from the American Community Survey include the ACS selected population profiles released annually. The ACS also releases about once every 5 years a special set of tables called the Selected Population Tables and American Indian and Alaska Native Tables. These are planned for update next month, so know that fresh data is coming soon. From the decennial census, iterated products include summary files 2 and 4, American Indian and Alaska Native summary file and demographic profiles. And starting in September, more iterated tables will be released from the 2020 census, currently planning for detailed demographic and housing characteristics file A to be released in September, and future releases would include iterated product detailed DHC file B. As a reminder, the product does show in the drop-down menu at the top of the table. Here I've shown an example of selected population profile from the ACS. Beyond memorizing the different data product types, another way that you can identify whether you're working with an iterated table or a standard table is where the population groups appear in the table itself. Remember, for standard tables, they appear in the table ID, as well as the universe statement and data rows of the table. For your iterated tables, you're going to see the population groups appear in the columns of your table in direct relation to the ones you selected. So in this screenshot, I'm showing I selected filter for Hispanic or Latino of any race and a code-based filter for Mexican. And on the right-hand side, I have 2 columns in my table corresponding to each of those filters I selected. You want to use these iterated tables anytime you want characteristics of detailed race and ethnic groups, as well as population totals for detailed race and ethnic groups that are not available through the standard tables. And the advantage is that they provide the greatest coverage of data for detailed population groups. So with that background, let's go ahead and show you how you can access these easily using data.census.gov. For our first example, I'd like to show you what is the percent of the Korean population with a bachelor's degree or higher in Illinois. Back to the live site, we'll click the US Census logo in the upper left, and then we'll click the advanced search link below. Just like before, I want 3 filters, one for my Korean population group, one filter for educational attainment, and a filter for Illinois. I'll start with my Korean population group filter by clicking Topics on the left. I'll choose Race and Ethnicity and drill into the level of detail needed. First, choose the folder for Asian. Then I'm going to choose the folder for Detailed Asian alone. And finally, I start to see those detailed population groups, and one of them is Korean alone. So I'm going to mark the checkbox for Korean alone and pay attention to the URL. It's added T equals 023. So a code, not a word or phrase, to the URL. This tells me that the selection is going to direct me to the set of iterated tables and not to the standard tables. Next on the left, I'll choose Topics again and choose Educational Attainment. So first I'll click the folder for Education, and then the checkbox Educational Attainment. And the last step is to select my geography. Choose Geography on the left. In the upper right, choose the box for State, and then mark the checkbox for Illinois. So here we will review our criteria. We have Korean alone, educational attainment, and Illinois. We will go ahead and click Search in the lower right and Tables at the top. Now, the first 3 tables, there is a work that we're doing to remove them from your table view. There is a something went wrong message. So if you're getting that in the meantime, as we work to resolve it, just know you need to scroll down a little bit further and click into tables that are actually giving you data. That work is, again, underway to remove those from the table view. So hopefully this isn't something you'll have to worry about for very long. But for the purposes of moving forward with our demonstration, I will click on S0201, Selected Population Profile in the United States. This should be the first table result that you would normally see in the list of results. And all of the tables below, when you click, do provide data. Now let's take a look at what this table has to offer In the product drop-down menu, we do see it comes from the 2021 ACS one-year estimate selected population profile product. The column of the table shows I'm getting data for Illinois. And here we see our population group based on the filter we selected, Korean alone. And we wanted educational attainment data. So as you scroll through this, you'll see in all capital letters, there are different sections of the table: relationship, households by type, marital status, and eventually you'll get to the educational attainment section. So the way we read this is that there were 49,389 Korean alone people living in Illinois who were 25 years and over. And just below, you can see the highest level of educational attainment they have received in the form of percentages. There's also a data row specifically showing bachelor's degree or higher and 62%. So this is the number that we were looking for, 62% of Korean alone population with a bachelor's degree or higher in this particular geography. And last, I'd like to take a moment to show you how to access the filters for American Indian tribes and tribal groupings. For this example, we're going to look at home ownership for American Indians whose race is Gila River Indian Community alone, compared to the larger Pima tribal grouping alone filter based on the 2010 census. Back to the live site, we'll click the US Census logo in the upper left. We'll choose Advanced Search. And I wanted to show you one additional tip. If you happen to know your survey or program of interest, you can select that first. I happen to know that the data I want from the 2010 come from the American Indian Alaska Native summary file. So I'm going to click Surveys on the left. We categorize these nicely, so you can click the folder for decennial census. And then you get a list of all of the options. The one I want is American Indian and Alaska Native summary file. When I mark the checkbox, the benefit of selecting this up front, all of the geographies and population group filters that are shown to me as I work through the panel moving forward, the system is making sure they're compatible with this particular data set. So it's certainly an optional step. You don't have to know your particular product up front, but if you do, you can go ahead and select it if you'd like. Now I would like to go ahead and select my American Indian filters for Gila River and for the Pima tribal grouping. I'll click Topics on the left, then choose Race and Ethnicity, and follow the prompts. I'll choose American Indian and Alaska Native. Then I'll choose American Indian. And then it gives me a list of the different American Indian tribal groupings. This is an alphabetized list. The Gila River Indian filter is within the Pima tribal grouping. So I want to click the Pima tribal grouping first. And then you'll start to see checkboxes to where you can select your particular tribe or tribal grouping. I'm going to select the first or the second checkbox here is Gila River Indian Community of the Gila River Indian Reservation alone. When I mark the checkbox, notice in the address bar, T equals 12K. So a code-based, not a nice word or phrase, was added to the URL. And then also for Pima tribal grouping alone, I'm going to mark that checkbox. Notice the system has added 252 to the URL. These are both code-based filters that are going to get me to iterated tables. I'm going to go ahead and run the search. At this point, I could select a housing or ownership topic if I wanted to, but I'm going to go ahead and click Search in the lower right and proceed without it. Then I'll choose Tables at the top, just like before. There are quite a few table results for this particular data set. However, the data I'm interested in are near the top of the result list. So I'm actually going to choose the second table result, HCT10. It provides tenure or home ownership by presence and age of owned children. Notice at the top, the product is shown, 2010 American Indian Alaska Native summary file. Then we have both of our population groups we selected in columns of the table. You can hover over the top of the table. Your cursor will change if you'd like to drag and adjust the width of the column so you can see the population group. So we have Gila River Indian Community alone first, and the Pima tribal grouping alone second. And this table's a little more detailed than what I want, so I'll collapse some of that information. The way we would read this is, for the universe occupied housing units, there were 3,324 total housing units occupied where the householder is identifying their race as Gila River Indian Community of the Gila River Indian Reservation alone. Out of that total, 1,904 households are owner occupied. So that's about 57% of households being owner occupied for that population group. It's a little bit higher than the comparative percentage for the overall Pima tribal grouping. All right, so I am excited to start moving forward towards your questions. I know when I first started accessing race and ethnicity data at the Census Bureau, I had a ton of questions myself. Before we start taking questions, I did want to share some common questions that we do get from other data users. One is, why do the totals for my different race and ethnic groups not add up to 100%? We talked about this, but just to make sure, we mostly find this from data users who are adding the full set of race data with the Hispanic or population total data without referencing the cross-tabulated tables. Again, do keep in mind race and ethnicity are two distinct concepts. So you'll want to pay attention to the specific groups that you're looking at if you're trying to add up and make numbers equal 100%. Another common question is, why do I get data not available message, or why do I not see data for all of my selected race and ethnic groups? So first, these are both indications that your population requirements have not been met for the iterated table with your specific combination of population groups and geographies. So if none of the groups are available, you'll get right off the bat a data not available message. If some of the groups are available, but some of them aren't, you'll see something similar to what I'm showing on the right-hand side of the screen, where I've selected filters for code-based filters for Chinese alone and Burmese alone to take me to the iterated table. I also selected California as a filter, but notice on the right-hand side of the screen, I only have one column. For Chinese alone, there is not a column for Burmese alone. So when this happens, you'll want to just check the iterated thresholds is probably the issue that you're running into. There are a variety of iterated tables from the US Census Bureau, and they all have their own set of population requirements. I'm showing you just a few examples on screen of how this works. And on the left-hand side, you'll see the different types of requirements. So the requirements can refer either to the total population for a particular geography, or the population for the specific race and ethnic groups filters you selected. Those requirements can also apply to the specific geography you selected or to the United States overall. So just to see how this works, I'm going to walk through the ACS 1-year selected population profile thresholds and also reference the screenshot we showed previously with Burmese missing from the columns. So as you're working through these thresholds, the way we read this is, for a table to be available for a particular population group, first, in the ACS selected population profile, there has to be 500,000 total people that live in the geography. So 500,000 total people that live in California. We all know California, of course, meets that requirement. Then 65,000, there has to be 65,000 people in the specific race and ethnic groups you selected. So this is where we're running into the issue for the Burmese population in California. By consulting another table, I found that number to be 22,439. That does not meet the population threshold for the ACS 1-year selected population profiles, and that's why we don't see a column with all those nice characteristics lined out for that population group. But we do see it for Chinese because they do exceed that 65,000 threshold. In addition to that, For certain products from the American Community Survey, there are what we call unweighted sample case requirements. This means that we would have had to have 50 people from the Burmese alone population respond to the survey, in addition to all the other requirements. You do not need to memorize these requirements, but if you're working with detailed race data and want to take a deep dive into them, I have provided some links to the technical documentation from the different surveys and programs mentioned. They are outlined in the links below. And another common question, how do I find business data for race and ethnicity? We showed you today how to find population totals and characteristics by race and ethnicity. We do provide information at the Census Bureau for business and business owners broken out by race and ethnicity. If you're interested in accessing those data, what I would recommend is checking out the annual business survey data. You can click the surveys filter, choose economic surveys, and then annual business survey. And the focus of the webinar today is how to access data that are currently available on data.census.gov. My area of expertise is helping you find the data that are currently available. If you have questions about how race and ethnicity was collected for the 2020 census, or any questions about a categorization of data, I would recommend checking out this resource here to a webinar that has more information on that topic. I've also provided some contact information on this slide as well. But those questions would be out of scope of what we would be talking about in today's Q&A. Finally, some resources to help you with data.census.gov. Under the single search bar, there is a feedback link, or you can shoot us an email to census.data@census.gov. We are excited to answer your data questions and any feedback that you may have about how we can make the site work better for you. We also encourage you to sign up for email updates. Visit the link on the left or scan the QR code right now in the upper right. Subscribe to data.census.gov updates, and this will allow you to get our monthly newsletter with the latest system updates, data releases, and educational opportunities to help you make the most of data.census.gov. In the spirit of learning more about our site, we also wanted to call out our 3-hour workshops. These are hands-on opportunities to learn about our site. There are 3 for data.census.gov, a basic, advanced, and mapping. We also have one on using microdata access tool in data.census.gov, and one on using the Census API or application programming interface. So we hope to see you in one of our workshops. We do offer them regularly, so if the current schedule does not meet your calendar and availability, please do check back because we add them each month. And with that, I'll turn it over to Alexa and we'll start taking your questions soon.
Thank you, Tyson. In just a few moments, we will begin our Q&A session. Today, we will be taking your questions over the WebEx audio. So to queue up for a question, you can use the raise hand icon located next to your name and at the bottom center of your screen. When we call your name, you'll then need to unmute yourself to ask your question. Be aware there may be a lag after you unmute yourself. But if you do have a question, we encourage that you queue up your line now if you'd like. And before we move on to that Q&A session, I'd like to invite you all to give us your thoughts on today's webinar through an evaluation survey. You can tell us if you found today's webinar valuable, what you liked about it, where we can improve, and even other topics you'd like to see us cover in the future. We read all of the comments and suggestions that you provide. So I'm going to go ahead and drop that link for the evaluation in the chat box now. So please take a moment to fill it out. If you have any questions after our session concludes, please feel free to reach out to one of our 2 email inboxes listed on the slide. If you are a member of the public, please reach out to the Center for Enterprise Dissemination at census.data@census.gov. And members of the media may contact the Public Information Office at pio@census.gov. So with that, let's go ahead and open it up for questions at this time. Anyone who would like to ask a question, please select that raise hand icon to queue up. Okay, could we please unmute Clint's line?
Hello?
Hi, yes.
Yes, we hear you.
I am with a public school district in Texas. I am looking at the geography filter and was hoping I might see my school district there. I see a few school districts there, so I'm a little confused. Can we request that our district be there, or do I need to use my list of census block groups if I'm going to pull data from my district? I'm not quite sure about what I'm looking at.
Sure. Thank you for the question. On the geography filters, there are a few different options for school districts. There, most states have unified school districts, so I would check the unified school district first, especially if you're not there and not finding what you're looking for. But when you click and then go to Texas, you should see, in most cases, in most states, a list that will populate that's pretty lengthy. And then if that is not
That's it. Thank you.
Oh, that answers perfect. And then just for everyone else's awareness on the call, some states have elementary and school districts as well. So definitely check all three of those primary pathways. Thank you for the question. We are ready for the next one.
Okay, could we please unmute Ethelyn's line?
I live in Detroit, and I wanted to know, how do I find income and homeowners in a particular zip code?
Yeah, thank you for the question. The geography that you would be looking for, you would use similar topic filters to what we showed today. But when you went to select your geography, the one you would be looking for is called zip code tabulation area.
Got
So
it.
use that for your geography filter, and the topic filter would work similar to what we showed. And if you have any other, if you need any other steps or get hung up, I would encourage you to write us in.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And Alexa, we should be ready for the next question.
Yep, I unmuted Pat. You may begin, Pat.
All right, thank you. The question I had was, when I can get to the place, specifically a zip code place or a city place, is there a way for me to get to a neighborhood? And then the follow-up to that would be, can I, via the neighborhood, cross-apply the CRE, your risk assessments for the resilience of a neighborhood?
Yes, thank you for your question. So we have data at the Census Bureau for small geographies. The closest equivalent to neighborhood would be census tract or block group data. I would encourage you to check those out. They're also in the boxes in the most common geographies at the top, census tract and block group. I do believe the community resilience estimates go down to the census tract level. But I would encourage you to write in your question if you encounter any specifics and
Okay.
need some additional help, but I would start with those filters.
And
on
a
your
quick
purposes.
follow-up to that too, where you've got the risk factors that go with the CRE, with the new emphasis that's looking at the ACEs, the adverse childhood encounters, that are affecting children. Has the Census Bureau done anything using any of those risks, those the ACE risk, to apply to census data?
That I'm not sure about and would be outside my expertise. I
Okay.
help people access the data that are currently available. But if you do write us in, we could connect you with the correct subject matter expert.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you for your question. Could we please unmute Jim's line next?
Risk category. So, in your slide, they have 5 category and 7 category. Is this for the 5 category is add up to 100 and the 7 add up to 100? And also, you said, the people can define them as more than one race. So if they can be more than one race, and how can you do the survey at up to 100?
Okay, I didn't catch the first part of your question, but I will answer the second part of your question first, if that's okay, before I lose track. So the way that, the data are tabulated, we tabulate it in different ways, but one of the most common ways you'll see data tabulated for Census Bureau data is to have the race categories alone and then another catch-all category for 2 or more races. So this is how it adds up to 100% is people either belong with one of these 6 race categories alone, or they identify with 2 or more races and would fall into the 7th category. There are plenty of different ways that you can slice and dice the data. If you wanted 2 or more races data in detail, that is certainly available on our site. And also for our individual population groups, I showed, for example, showing data for the Korean alone population. We have another filter for people who identify as Korean alone or in combination with one or more other race groups. So that's how it adds up to 100% in this particular distribution, which is most common throughout our tables, but there are plenty of other ways to access the data as well. And I didn't catch your first question.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you for your question. Could we please unmute KB's line?
So how do
Line
I,
is open.
sorry, yes. So thanks. So how do I find the data, say, for USA population growth since 1960 to 2020?
And what was the topic that you said? I didn't
US
catch.
population growth since 1960 to 2020. So I want to create a table that shows the data.
Got it. So for data.census.gov, what we have available is data back to the 2000 census. So if you wanted data before that, I would encourage you to write us in and we can direct you to the best point of contact and other historical information that may have that.
Okay, so suppose say I want to do say from since 2000 to 2020.
Correct. That's what you would find on data.census.gov. But we would
And can I
certainly.
create one table, or I have to search for each year and then download the data and then create offline on Excel spreadsheet?
Yeah, typically most tables on our site would show you one single year at a time.
Right.
Let me go to a table really quickly. The product drop-down menu at the top of the table, sometimes it allows you to switch between different product types, but primarily it allows you to switch between different years. So for an example, I just pulled up a table at random. This particular table comes from the ACS and goes back to 2010. So you would just switch between the different years through the product drop-down menu. If you were working with the decennial census table, you would see that drop down back to 2000 potentially. or you may need to find the correct table ID because they have changed table IDs from year to year.
Okay. So online, this tool, I cannot view the data from 2000 to 2020 on single table.
I'm not aware of any tables that provide that,
Okay, thanks.
but we would, yeah, we'll jot that down as feedback. Thank you.
Could we please unmute Ken Keisha's line?
Kasia, you can start with your question. Kasia, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Oh, there you go. Yeah, proceed.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead with your question.
Yeah, I just wanted you to, the difference, you said was it ethnicity and race, that they're two different concepts? I mean, can you explain further about that? As far as the race and ethnicity?
Yep, and oh, sorry. I was going to chime in. We do have a subject matter expert on the line who may be able to best speak to that, but I'm sorry, did you finish asking your question?
Yeah.
I'm not sure if he's been able to unmute, but yeah.
Hi, okay, sorry, I can answer because it looks like Paul is having troubles unmuting. But yes, per the 1997 OMB standards, race and ethnicity are two separate concepts. So that's why you see, for example, on the census questionnaire that we first ask you if you are of Hispanic or Latino origin, and then the subsequent question asks you for your race. And so anyone who is of Hispanic or Latino origin can be of any race group because they are treated as two discrete concepts per the 1997 OMB standards.
Okay, and how did they define what ethnicity was? You know what I'm saying? What would be considered ethnicity versus race? You know, yeah, like you said, it's defined. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, I will put the
You know,
1990s.
Yeah.
I'll
Go
put the
ahead.
1997 standards in the chat, and that way you can look at them for more information about how they were defined.
Okay. But race still remains the same, correct? I mean, far as like white and black.
Tyson included a slide that had all of the race groups as defined by OMB, and the census also uses another category, which he mentioned, which is the some other race category.
Some other, oh, okay. And you don't, I mean, do they recognize, like you said, it has to be a certain amount for them to recognize that, correct?
No, I'm sorry, I'm unclear as to what you mean by a certain amount.
Like, I mean, if you put, you know, some other race, I mean, is it actually recognized if someone, you know, puts, you know, some other race? It has to be one of the races within that those 7 categories?
So I'm sorry, I'm not completely sure.
When you say some other
the
categories, do you have to pick within those 7 categories, Black, white, Asian, you know, Native American?
So what I can do is in the chat, I will actually put in the code list that was used for the 2020 decennial census and is also used for the 2020 American Community Survey and going forward, so 2021. And you can also see which detailed groups were classified as some other race, for example. And you can also see which groups were classified as white. You can see in all of these OMB categories and some other race, which groups got classified into those.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you for those questions. I just wanted to quickly add that if we were unable to get to your question today, or if you have additional feedback that you would like to share with us, I did put our email box in the chat, and that is census.data@census.gov. So please feel free to reach out to us using that email address. And I'm going to pass things back over to Tyson.
Great. Thank you all so much for joining the webinar. I wanted to wrap up with another educational resource for you. When you visit data.census.gov and click the Help button beneath the single search bar, it will take you to our resource page. So you'll be able to access a whole collection of educational materials in a variety of formats to help you make the most of using our site. You'll see PDFs with step-by-step instructions, answers to FAQs, full-length recorded webinars, short videos, as well as those workshops that we hope to see you at. And of course, please email your data questions and feedback to census.data@census.gov. And if you have a training request, we have an email address listed here. Also wanted to make sure you are aware there is a local data dissemination specialist assigned to your state. So if you work for a local organization or would like to reach out to request a training from your local expert, you can reach them at census.askdata@census.gov or 1-844-ASK-DATA. Thank you all so much for joining the webinar today. And I will let Anthony close out. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tyson. This concludes today's webinar. You may disconnect at this time. Have a great afternoon.